My suitcase lay open on the bed, a hungry mouth swallowing the last 6 years of my life. The sound of my zipper was the loudest thing in the quiet mansion, a harsh, final rasp. I didn't need much. The clothes, the few books that were truly mine, the small porcelain dove my mother gave me before she passed. These fit into a single modest case. Everything else in this gilded cage felt like a costume I was finally shedding. I felt him before I saw him. A shift in the air, the subtle, expensive scent of his cologne. I didn't turn around. Packing light, I see. Alexander Sterling's voice was a smooth, familiar baritone, always carrying that undercurrent of cool amusement, as if the whole world were a mildly interesting play put on for his benefit. I kept folding a sweater, my fingers steady. You always did travel light, Chloe, he continued. I heard his footsteps on the plush carpet as he leaned against the doorframe. I could picture the pose, one shoulder against the wood, hands in the pockets of his tailored trousers, that infuriating half-smile on his face. What's the matter? Finally figured out that a son wasn't the bargaining chip you thought it was? Couldn't force the ring, so now you're cutting your losses? Leaving the liability behind. The word liability hung in the air, cruel and deliberate. It was the final, perfect distillation of how he saw our son. How he'd always seen him. A tool. A mistake. A liability. For 6 years, I'd let his words carve canyons of doubt inside me. For 6 years I'd tried to fill those canyons with enough love, enough proof, to build a bridge he might one day cross. I was done building. I finally turned. He was exactly as I'd imagined, a study in casual arrogance. I don't want anything from you, Alexander. Not anymore. He chuckled, a dry, soundless thing. Right. So you're just going to walk out. Leave Liam here. That's your solution. Before I could answer, not that I owed him one, a small shadow detached itself from the hallway. My heart, which I thought had calloused over, gave a single painful thud. Liam stood there, my 6-year-old boy, clutching his blue ceramic piggy bank to his chest like a shield. His eyes, the same stormy gray as his father's, were wide and terribly serious. He'd been listening. Of course he had. He walked into the room, his steps small and deliberate on the huge rug. He didn't look at Alexander. He came straight to me, his little face set in an expression that was far too old for him. Mom, he said, his voice clear. He tipped the piggy bank. A cascade of coins and a few crumpled dollar bills fell into my waiting hand. The metal was cool, the paper soft. It was every allowance he'd ever saved, every tooth fairy dollar, every quarter earned for helping or hindering Mrs. Henderson in the garden. You need to take care of yourself, he stated as if reciting something important. And you have to promise me something. I looked into his eyes, my throat tight. What, sweetheart? Promise you'll never come back. The air left the room. I saw Alexander go still out of the corner of my eye. Liam's gaze was unwavering, earnest. Aunt Diana said she'll come be my mom for real, but only if you go away and don't come back. He said it with the pure, brutal logic of a child. It wasn't malicious. It was a transaction. A deal he was brokering for a better family. So promise, okay? The expectation in his face was like a physical weight. He was waiting for my signature so his new, improved life could begin. Alexander found his voice first, a low, warning growl. Liam Alexander Sterling. That is not how we speak to your mother. Who taught you to say such things? Liam's lower lip trembled for a second, then pushed out in a stubborn pout. He dropped his gaze to the floor, but his voice remained oddly clear. But last time Aunt Diana asked you if you liked Mom and you said you didn't. At the zoo. I heard you. He lifted his chin, a tiny replica of his father's defiance. So I don't have to like her that much either. If she wants to go, she should go. There was the final verdict. A week ago had been his 6th birthday party. A lavish, ridiculous affair at the country club. He'd begged for Alexander and Diana to take him, just the 3 of them. I'd stood by the window watching the black sedan pull away, my heart a shriveled thing in my chest. That was the moment, I think. The moment the last thread of desperate hope snapped. Hearing his words now, I felt nothing. A vast, quiet emptiness where the sorrow used to rage. The pain had burned itself out, leaving only cold ash. I was still crouching level with him. I closed my fingers around his money, the edges of the coins biting into my palm. I nodded, a small, decisive movement. All right, Liam. I promise. I didn't say mom again. The word felt like a lie on my tongue. I won't come back to this house. And I won't be your mother anymore. I made my voice soft, final. You're free. He blinked, thrown by my easy acquiescence. For 2 seconds his confident mask slipped, revealing a flicker of something like confusion. Then it was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated triumph. A brilliant, gap-toothed grin split his face. Yay, he cheered, spinning on his heel. I'm gonna go call Aunt Diana and tell her. And he was gone, his footsteps pattering down the hall toward the phone in the kitchen, already narrating his victory. The silence he left behind was deafening. I stood up, my knees protesting. I smoothed my plain cotton dress, walked to the bed and closed the suitcase. The click of the latches was the period at the end of the sentence. I turned to leave. As I passed Alexander, his hand shot out, fingers wrapping around my bicep. His grip was firm, not painful but inescapable. I stopped but didn't look at him. Chloe. His voice had lost its mocking edge. It was low, almost rough. He turned me to face him. His eyes, usually so sharply focused, were half-lidded, unreadable. Chloe, he said again as if tasting the name. Not liking doesn't mean hating. You know that. I said nothing. I just watched his face, this man I had loved with a foolish, all-consuming passion since I was too young to know better. These years, he continued, his thumb moving almost imperceptibly against my sleeve, I've gotten used to you. To this. Why push it to this extreme? What is this tantrum really about? By the end, the faint impatience was back, roughening his tone. He couldn't understand. In his world, people didn't leave. They waited. They negotiated. They settled for what they were given. I had 1,000 words on my tongue. Explanations about loneliness, about years of being a ghost in my own home, about watching my own son learn to dismiss me, about Diana's constant perfumed presence and Alexander's passive allowance of it, about the kiss photographed at the charity gala that had been splashed across the society pages, and his cold, "What do you expect me to do, Chloe? We're not married." But they all felt superfluous now. Melodramatic. The time for talking was so far behind us it was out of sight. I simply pulled my arm back. His fingers tightened for a fraction of a second, then let go. Take good care of Liam, I said, my voice devoid of inflection. It wasn't a plea. It was a reminder of a responsibility he so often forgot. Then I turned, picked up my suitcase and walked out of the bedroom, down the grand staircase, and through the towering front door of the Sterling mansion for the last time. The long, winding driveway through the exclusive Oak Hill estate seemed to stretch for miles. The weather had turned, mirroring the internal season. A cold, biting wind swept down from the north, snatching at my hair and my thin coat. It hurled handfuls of dead, copper-colored leaves against me. It would have been easy, so easy, to let myself look tragic, the discarded mistress trudging into the cold with her single suitcase. But I didn't cry. I didn't slow down. And I didn't look back. Not once. I had already rented a small apartment across town, in a neighborhood of old brick buildings and noisy, fragrant restaurants. I'd secured the lease with the last of the money my mother had left me, a nest egg I'd kept secret even from Alexander, a tiny piece of autonomy I'd clung to. I'd also just 3 days ago gotten a job. My degree in fine arts had gathered dust for years, deemed a nice hobby by Alexander. Now it was my lifeline. I'd applied to a children's arts center called the Canvas Corner. They'd been desperate for someone with classical training who could handle a room full of 5-year-olds armed with glitter glue. I'd gotten the call yesterday. I started Monday. As I reached the ornate iron gates of Oak Hill and stepped onto the public sidewalk, the first heavy drop of rain hit my forehead. I hailed a cab, gave the driver the address to my new unfamiliar life, and finally, in the back seat of that slightly musty yellow car, I allowed myself to close my eyes. I didn't think of Alexander's bewildered anger. I didn't think of Liam's triumphant smile. I thought of the key in my purse waiting for me in a little envelope at the leasing office. I thought of the blank walls of my new apartment, waiting for me to decide what color they should be. I thought of the smell of tempera paint and clay. The cab pulled up to a red brick building with a faded awning. My building. Home. It was modest, a little worn, and completely, utterly mine. I paid the driver, hauled my suitcase up the 3 steps to the lobby, and collected my key. The apartment was on the 3rd floor, walk up. The stairs were a challenge with the suitcase, but each step felt like a purge. By the time I unlocked the door to apartment 3B, I was breathless. It was empty. A living room with scuffed hardwood floors, a small kitchen with an old gas stove, a bedroom just big enough for a bed and a dresser. Sunshine fought its way through a single window, illuminating dancing motes of dust. I set my suitcase down in the middle of the empty living room. The silence was different here. It wasn't the heavy, oppressive silence of the mansion. It was a quiet full of potential. It was waiting for me to fill it. I walked to the window and looked out. I could see a snippet of the busy street below, a tree stubbornly holding on to a few last leaves, the fire escape of the building next door. It was real. It was messy. It was life. I took a deep, shuddering breath. For the first time in years, the air I breathed felt like my own. The ache was still there, a deep bruise on my soul, but beneath it, faint and fragile, was something else. It was the feeling of the ground finally, solidly being under my own 2 feet. My first day at the canvas corner dawned with a sharp, clean light. The panic I'd expected, the regret, the longing for the sterile comfort of the mansion, never came. Instead, there was a kind of focused numbness, a determination to simply put one foot in front of the other. I dressed in simple, practical clothes. Dark jeans, a soft sweater, flat shoes I could stand in for hours. I looked like myself or who I might have been a long time ago. The center was a bright, chaotic burst of color in an otherwise nondescript strip mall. The walls were painted with murals of dancing animals and swirling galaxies, and the air hummed with the low thrum of child energy and the sweet, chalky smell of pastels. I found the main office, my heart doing a small, nervous tap dance against my ribs. The director, a warm, harried-looking woman named Brenda with a perpetual smear of blue paint on her cheek, welcomed me with a relieved smile. "Chloe. Thank goodness. The 5 to 7-year-old Color Explorers class is in mutiny. Ms. Jenkins called in sick and my substitute just quit after a glitter incident. You're a literal lifesaver." She gave me a whirlwind tour. The supply closet smelling of wood and citrus-scented cleaner, the kiln room for clay projects, the sinks already splattered with a rainbow of paint. Then she led me to the staff room, a small space dominated by a coffee maker and a bulletin board overflowing with flyers and children's drawings. Inside, 3 young women were huddled around a little girl. The girl stood very still, holding a sketchbook to her chest, her expression one of profound patience. "So, Amelia, sweetie," one teacher crooned, leaning in. "Your uncle, does he like chocolate cake? Or is he more of a cheesecake guy?" Another jumped in. "What about movies? Action or, like, thoughtful dramas?" The third sighed dreamily. "Oh, Amelia, honey, will he be picking you up tonight? Please say yes." The girl, Amelia, blinked her large, serious eyes. "Teachers," she said, her voice cool and precise. "Didn't you call me in here to discuss the chiaroscuro issues in my still life?" The 3 teachers exchanged slightly embarrassed glances, their cheeks flushing. "Well, yes, but if there's no pressing artistic critique," Amelia continued, turning to leave, "I should return to the classroom. My value study is unfinished." As she turned, she saw me standing in the doorway. She gave me a brief, appraising look. "Hello," she said politely. "You must be the new instructor. I am Amelia Thorne." With a slight nod that was somehow both childish and regal, she walked past me and back down the hall, her Mary Janes clicking on the linoleum. Brenda chuckled. "That's Amelia. 8 going on 40. Don't let her frostiness fool you, she's a marshmallow inside. And a truly gifted little artist." She clapped her hands. "Ladies, this is Chloe, our new hire. Go easy on her." The 3 teachers, Maya, Priya and Jess, were instantly overwhelmingly friendly. They showed me the lesson plans, the attendance sheets, the particular horrors of the glue gun cabinet. Once the formalities were over, they launched back into their favorite topic. "You have no idea," Maya whispered, her eyes wide. "That little girl's uncle is Lucas Thorne." I must have looked blank because Priya gasped. "Lucas Thorne. He and Alexander Sterling are basically tied for the title of this city's most eligible, elusive billionaire bachelor." Jess sighed, leaning on the table. "Well, maybe not anymore. The gossip columns say Alexander is officially back with his first love, Diana Reed, now that she's finally divorced and back in the country. So I guess that leaves Lucas Thorne all alone at the top." Hearing Alexander's name in this context, in this bright, paint-splattered place, was like hearing a distant language I used to speak. It registered but held no meaning, no emotional pull. My mind skittered away from it, untouched. But the other name, Lucas Thorne. A silent, internal sigh deflated me. Of course. Lucas Thorne. Alexander's arch-rival, his opposite in every way. Brash where Alexander was calculated, publicly volatile where Alexander was privately cold. And he had always held me in utter contempt. Every charity event, every rare occasion our paths had crossed, his derision had been a physical force. He'd never bothered to lower his voice. Pathetic, he'd sneer, his dark eyes raking over me as I stood silently beside Alexander. The photo of Sterling and his socialite kissing is trending #1 and you don't even blink. What do you get out of this, Chloe? A title? A station at his table? Would it kill you to look at someone else? His words had been needles, each one finding the raw, hidden parts of my shame. I'd hated him for it. Hated him because he was right, and he saw through the carefully maintained facade to the desperate, clinging woman beneath. Now fate, in its cruel sense of humor, had placed his niece in my class. I needed this job. It was my independence, my survival. If Lucas Thorne found out I was here, he would not hesitate. He'd call Brenda, use his influence and have me fired out of pure spite or maybe some twisted sense of pity. He'd see it as another example of my pathetic scrambling. My policy, I said to the 3 teachers, my voice carefully neutral, is to avoid any special attention with the students. It's best for the classroom dynamic. So I'll probably just handle administrative work during pickup. I needed to stay away from the front door, to become a ghost in the back offices whenever parents arrived. They nodded, though they looked disappointed not to have a new accomplice in their Lucas Thorne fan club. The rest of the day was a baptism by fire. The color explorers were indeed in a state of glorious anarchy. I survived by abandoning all pretense of control and embracing the chaos. We didn't draw still lives. We made texture monsters with scraps of fabric and googly eyes. We didn't study color theory. We had a paint splatter symphony to loud rhythmic music. By the end of the 2-hour class, I was covered in more paint than the children, my ears were ringing, and for the first time in a year I wasn't thinking about my own life. As I was scrubbing magenta handprints off a table, my phone vibrated in my pocket. The screen flashed, Alexander. The noise of the center, the laughter, the running feet, the clatter of supplies, faded into a dull roar. I stared at his name. He hadn't called since I left. I walked into the quiet, tiled hallway by the bathrooms and answered. Hello. There was a pause on his end. The background noise from my side, a child's triumphant shriek about a perfect purple dinosaur, must have been confusing. Where are you? He finally asked, his voice tight. At work, I said simply. Another pause, then a faint, disbelieving laugh. At work. On the subway at work. This is the life you chose, Chloe. I could hear the smirk. I could picture him in his downtown office, all glass and steel, looking down at the city he owned a piece of. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. Did you need something, Alexander? His footsteps echoed that familiar measured pace as he undoubtedly paced to his floor-to-ceiling window. Liam has a fever. A high one. He's asking for you. His voice softened, turning strategic. Tell me your address. I'll send a car. You should be here. The old Chloe would have been already grabbing her purse, her heart a frantic bird in a cage. The mother in me still flinched, a deep, instinctual pull. But I saw Liam's face, bright with joy as he ran to call Diana. I heard his deal-making promise. I took a breath, the smell of institutional soap and child sweat filling my nose. No. That's not necessary. The Sterling household has a doctor on call. He doesn't need me. Alexander's voice dropped, losing its false warmth. You're really going to give him up just like that? He sounded almost amused by the absurdity. Because he said he likes Diana more? He's 6, Chloe. He doesn't understand. He never had. Alexander had never understood my love for Liam, even though I'd tried to explain it 1,000 times. Even after the accident, the condom that broke, the frantic trip for the morning after pill I'd secretly taken but which had inexplicably failed. He'd never believed it was truly an accident. Because I'd loved him so obviously, so foolishly for so long, he'd decided the pregnancy was a calculated gambit. In his eyes, my love for Liam was never pure. It was always tied to my desire for him for legitimacy for the ring. So he couldn't possibly understand the nights I'd spent weeping silently, terrified as I watched my son's eyes light up for Diana, or the crushing anxiety of trying to cling to a child who was learning to let go. The subway metaphor was apartment. I was on a different track now, leaving the station. The connection was breaking up. "No, Alexander," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Not because he said it. Because it's true. He does like her more. And I don't want to force myself where I'm not wanted anymore. I'm done spending all my energy trying to earn a love that should have been unconditional. He started to say something else, to argue, but then another voice cut through the receiver, small and clear and maddeningly cheerful. "Daddy, my fever's all gone. Can I go to the zoo with Aunt Diana tomorrow?" I heard Alexander's sharp intake of breath, the rustle of the phone against his shirt. "Katie, listen." I didn't. I ended the call. The screen went black. I leaned my forehead against the cool cinder block wall of the hallway, the sounds of the art center rushing back in. I had survived the first call. I had said no. Later, crammed onto the evening subway, swaying with the motion of the car, I pushed the entire conversation from my head. The train reached a major hub and half the crowd emptied out. I sank into a suddenly free seat, the acidic ache in my legs easing. I closed my eyes, not sleeping, just existing in the loud, anonymous dark. A week passed. I settled into a rhythm. I learned which child hid the good scissors, which one needed praise before every brushstroke, which one would eat the clay if unsupervised. Lucas Thorne never appeared. My strategy of hiding during pickup worked. I became adept at grading drawings in the office, timing my breaks for when the hallway was clear. Only once, when Amelia was absent, did I venture out to help usher the other children to their parents. I tried to treat all the students with the same gentle, professional distance, but Amelia had sensed my avoidance. She was a perceptive child. One afternoon I saw her in the hallway between classes. She was sitting on a small bench, her chin propped in her hands, staring out the window at the parking lot. She looked smaller than usual and deeply sad. A group of older boys, roughhousing, tumbled past and one of them knocked her sketchbook from her hands. They ran off laughing without an apology. I was at her side in an instant, crouching down. "Amelia, are you okay? Did you get hurt?" I reached for her, my teacher instincts overriding my caution. She flinched back, covering her knee. "I'm fine. Don't trouble yourself. I'll ask Ms. Maya for a Band-Aid." I froze, my hand in midair. Then I softened my voice. "I have Band-Aids in my desk too, you know. The kind with little stars on them." She turned her head away, presenting me with the stubborn, perfect roundness of the back of her head. "I don't want yours." Her voice was muffled. "I know you don't like me. You don't have to pretend to be nice." The accusation was so blunt it stole my breath. "Amelia, I don't dislike you. Not at all. You're incredibly well-behaved, you're polite, and you have more raw talent than any student I've ever taught. How could I not like you?" She shot me a quick sideways glance, then looked back out the window with a soft oomph. "That day Ms. Park asked you to walk me to the lobby after class. When you heard it was me, your face changed. You said you had paperwork. And last week at lunch, I didn't want to sit with those other teachers because they only ask questions about my uncle. So I brought my lunchbox to your table. You finished your sandwich in 3 bites and practically ran away." She puffed out her cheeks, the memory clearly still stinging. "No one has ever disliked me that much before. If you don't like me, I won't like you either." Guilt, warm and sharp, pricked at me. He was right. That day in the staff lunchroom, I'd thought my escape was smooth. Amelia had set her lunchbox down across from me with a quiet, dignified sigh. "They're too noisy," she'd stated, not looking at me. "All they do is ask about my uncle's favorite color." I'd nodded, sliding my tray to make room, my heart already starting to pound. Then less than 30 seconds later her smartwatch had buzzed. She'd looked at it and said, "It's Uncle Lucas." The name had been a trigger. I'd mumbled an excuse and fled. I had no way to explain my fear of her uncle without sounding insane or revealing a past I wanted buried. So I met her wounded eyes and chose honesty, if not the whole truth. "You're right. I was avoiding you. And I was wrong." I took a careful breath. "From now on I will eat lunch with you if you want. And I will walk you to the lobby after class. But you have to believe me, Amelia Thorne, I do not dislike you. She turned her face fully toward me. Her profile, with its button nose and serious mouth, was suddenly heartbreakingly young. Really? She asked, the imperiousness gone, replaced by a fragile hope. Really? I promise. She considered this for a long moment. Then, with the gravity of a diplomat signing a treaty, she held out both her hands to me. Then we must hug to seal the agreement. My leg hurts from the fall, and hugs are scientifically proven to release endorphins, which are natural painkillers. A laugh escaped me, surprising us both. I carefully gathered her into a hug. She was tiny and stiff for a second, then melted against me, her arms wrapping tightly around my neck. The scrape on her knee was already blooming red. I carried her to the office, disinfected and bandaged her wound with starry band-aids, and then marched back to the classroom to secure apologies from the rowdy boys. When we returned to class, Amelia blinked up at me and a tiny real smile touched the corners of her mouth. A truce had been signed. During lunch break that day, I pulled Amelia's student file. My eyes caught on the date of birth. Today was her 8th birthday. The source of her morning gloom was now glaringly obvious. I thought of the rabbit motif on her pencil case, the bunny keychain on her backpack. With a sudden, fierce determination, I spent my entire planning period in a frenzy of covert creation. In the supply closet, I found some soft cream-colored yarn. My fingers, once skilled at intricate embroidery to pass the lonely hours in the mansion, remembered their old craft. I crocheted at lightning speed, shaping a miniature floppy-eared rabbit. I even managed to fashion a tiny blue dress for it, matching the one Amelia wore that day. 10 minutes before the final class ended, Amelia, as always, finished her detailed ink drawing well before the others. I called her to my desk. "Happy birthday, Amelia," I whispered and placed the little rabbit in her hand. She stared at it, her usually expressive face completely still for 2 full seconds. She turned it over, examining the stitches, the floppy ears, the little dress. "Is this me?" she asked, her voice very small. I smiled, feeling my eyes crinkle. "As clever and unique as you are." "Thank you, Miss Chloe," she said, her poise returning as she accepted the gift with formal grace. "I like it very much." She turned to go back to her seat, took 2 steps, then turned back. She crooked her finger at me. "You must squat down. I have a secret." I obliged, crouching to her level. "What is it?" In the next second, her soft, quick lips pressed against my cheek. "That is a thank you kiss," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "This is the first present I received today. And it is my favorite." She pulled back, her eyes bright and impossible to hide behind any facade. "Miss Chloe," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur. "Do you think my Uncle Lucas is handsome? I can give you his phone number. As a thank you for the bunny." The warmth that had bloomed in my chest flash froze. "Oh no, Amelia. That's not necessary. A hug and a kiss are more than enough, thanks." When I learned with immense relief that Lucas would not be picking her up that night, her nanny was coming, I agreed to walk her to the lobby. The truce felt good. The birthday hug felt real. But as we rounded the corner to the glass front doors, my blood turned to ice. Leaning against the driver's side door of a matte gray Maybach, looking effortlessly imposing in a dark coat, was Lucas Thorne. Time didn't slow down. It sharpened, crystallizing every detail with punishing clarity. The way the fading afternoon light glinted off the car's sleek hood. The casual power in his stance. One ankle crossed over the other, arms folded. The sharp, familiar lines of his face, currently turned toward the center's doors. A slight, unreadable curve to his mouth. Amelia's hand tightened in mine. "Uncle Lucas," she exclaimed, her voice a mix of surprise and delight. She dropped my hand and trotted toward him. "Why are you picking me up? You said Nana Maria was coming." His gaze, which had been fixed on a point just past my shoulder, slid slowly down to land on me. It was like a physical touch, cool and assessing. He looked back at Amelia, the curve of his mouth deepening into something more genuine. "Plans changed, gremlin. I'm kidnapping you for your birthday. Fancy dinner. Your choice." "Yay." She bounced on the balls of her feet, the careful artist replaced by an excited 8-year-old. My feet were rooted to the spot. Every instinct screamed to turn and walk away, to vanish back into the safety of the supply closets. But I was caught. He'd seen me. Fleeing now would be absurd. I forced my legs to move, taking a few steps forward until I was standing beside Amelia on the sidewalk. The chill in the air had nothing to do with the weather. "Hello," I managed, my voice thin. "Amelia's guardian." The title felt stupid on my tongue. He didn't answer right away. His eyes traveled over me, taking in my paint-smeared jeans, my simple sweater, my hair pulled back in a messy knot. It was a comprehensive inventory, and I felt more exposed than I ever had in Alexander's critical gaze. Finally, a slow, mocking smile tugged at his lips. "Chloe. Small world. Or a desperate one. Alexander's cutting you off so deep you have to work at a kitty art factory." He shook his head, a tisk-tisk sound in his throat. "Pathetic." The old hot shame tried to rise. I clenched my teeth against it. He didn't get to do this to me anymore. I wasn't that woman. "I've left Alexander," I stated, my voice gaining a little steel. "My job has nothing to do with Mr. Sterling." I needed to make that clear, to draw a boundary before he could use me as a weapon in his endless feud. His eyebrows lifted, the mockery fading, replaced by sharp interest. "Left him?" His gaze intensified, scanning my face as if looking for proof. "Because of Diana Reed? Did they finally push you out?" I had no desire to give Lucas Thorne a front-row seat to my personal wreckage. "My personal life isn't relevant to my work here, Mr. Thorne. If there's nothing concerning Amelia's progress or schedule, I should get back to the office." Amelia, sensing the tension, looked between us, her earlier joy dimming. She reached up and tugged on Lucas's coat sleeve. "Uncle Lucas, Miss Chloe made me a birthday bunny. Look." She held up the crocheted rabbit. He glanced at it, then back at me, his expression unreadable. I gave Amelia a small, strained smile. "Bye-bye, Amelia. Have a wonderful birthday dinner." I turned, my spine rigid, and walked back toward the doors. I could feel his eyes on my back the entire way, a steady, unnerving pressure. 20 minutes later, my work was done. I gathered my things, said goodbye to Brenda, and pushed through the front doors into the chilly evening, bracing myself for the walk to the bus stop. The Maybach was still there. The passenger window hummed down. Lucas rested his forearm on the sill. He'd taken off his coat. The crisp white of his shirt sleeve was stark against the dark interior. "Get in," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. I stopped, clutching my tote bag. "Excuse me. Amelia insists you have to celebrate her birthday with her. She's brooding in the back seat. Says the birthday is incomplete." He jerked his head toward the rear. "No parking here. Get in. We'll talk on the way." I looked into the back seat. Amelia was indeed there, buckled in, her face a picture of solemn expectation. He gave me a tiny, pleading wave. My brain short-circuited. This was a terrible idea. A catastrophic idea. But the street was a no-parking zone, and a traffic officer was eyeing the luxurious car with professional interest. My hesitation could get him a ticket, and somehow, that felt like it would make everything more complicated. "Fine," I muttered, yanking open the passenger door and sliding in. The leather seat was cool and enveloping, smelling of citrus and clean, expensive things. As soon as the door clicked shut, he pulled smoothly into traffic. Only then, catching the faint, victorious curve of his mouth in the rearview mirror, did I realize my mistake. The car had been there for at least 25 minutes. If they were going to ticket him, they already would have. He'd played me. "Amelia," I said, twisting in my seat to look at her. "You really didn't have to." "It's protocol," she announced gravely. "For a truly significant birthday, one must have a quorum of important persons. You are an important person, Miss Chloe. You gave me the first and best present." My protest died in my throat. I looked at Lucas. He kept his eyes on the road, but the corner of his mouth twitched. "Kid's a tyrant. What can I say?" I'd intended to ask him to drop me at the nearest corner, but Amelia chattered the whole way to the restaurant, a French bistro she'd chosen for its superior dessert cart, and slipped her small arm through mine as we walked in. "This year, it's not just me and Uncle Lucas for my birthday," she confided, her voice brimming with satisfaction. The words I'd planned stuck in my throat, unsayable. The dinner was surprisingly pleasant. Lucas, for all his public bluster, was a different person with his niece. He listened to her detailed review of the dessert cart with genuine attention, debated the merits of chocolate versus vanilla soufflé with her, and didn't once look at his phone. Amelia, freed from the pressure of being the sole focus of an adult's intense, gossip-driven interest, blossomed. She smiled, a real, unguarded smile that transformed her face. She told stories about her art, about a complicated comic strip she was designing featuring a time-traveling rabbit. I mostly listened, interjecting only to ask a question or agree with her artistic choices. Lucas watched us, his dark eyes thoughtful, saying little. The mockery was gone, replaced by a quiet, observant intensity that was somehow more unnerving. Amelia, perhaps having used up a year's worth of excitement, fell asleep on the drive home, her head lolling against my shoulder. The car was silent except for the soft purr of the engine and her even breathing. Lucas glanced at us in the rearview mirror. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low, stripped of its usual edge. Her parents are diplomats. They've been stationed in Brussels for 3 years. They're not the hugging type. Too busy changing the world to remember their daughter's birthday. For a moment, the lazy, flippant billionaire was gone. Chloe, he said, and my name sounded different in his mouth now. Thank you. For the gift. For being here tonight. I looked down at the sleeping girl, her lashes dark against her cheeks. Gently, I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. I like Amelia, I said softly and meant it. Being with her, it makes me happy too. The car moved steadily through the neon-lit streets. I stared out at the streaks of light, a strange sense of theatrical irony settling over me. I had poured 6 years of relentless, anxious love into my own son. I had memorized the feel of his forehead when he was feverish, the sound of his laughter, the way his small hand fit in mine. And at his birthday he hadn't wanted me. He'd traded me for a promise of a better, shinier mother. This little girl whom I'd known for a month, who carried the baggage of a famous, difficult uncle, had held a homemade bunny and called it her favorite thing. She'd given me a thank you kiss. The imbalance was so profound it was laughable. The car slowed, pulling up in front of my apartment building. I carefully disentangled myself from Amelia, laying her down gently on the seat. Good night, I whispered to her sleeping form. I got out, and to my surprise Lucas did too. He came around the car and called my name just as I reached the front steps. Chloe. I turned. The streetlight cast half his face in shadow. Is there something else? He took a step closer. His dark eyes were so deep they seemed to swallow the light around them, reflecting nothing. Don't love Alexander anymore. The statement was blunt, jarring. He was never good to you. I stood there, stunned. Of all the things I'd expected Lucas Thorne to say to me, this wasn't even on the list. My mind scrambled for a response. Defensive, dismissive, something, but came up empty. By the time I gathered my wits, he was already sliding back into the driver's seat. The Maybach pulled away with a soft growl, leaving me standing on the curb with only the ghost of red taillights and the echo of his words. Don't love Alexander anymore. It dawned on me, belated and bewildering, that maybe Lucas Thorne didn't despise me after all. After that night it was almost always Lucas who came for pickup. The other teachers of course noticed instantly. Their earlier friendly curiosity transformed into a kind of frantic, giggling deference. They now practically fought each other for pickup duty, eager for a 30-second interaction with Lucas Thorne. I, true to my word and my survival instinct, stayed in the office, head down, grading endless drawings of three-eyed cats and lopsided houses. One day, after a particularly long afternoon of mixing gallons of washable green paint, I walked out the front doors after work, exhausted and looking forward to a silent evening in my apartment. The familiar matte gray Maybach was idling at the curb. The back seat was empty. Lucas must have already dropped Amelia at home. The driver's door opened and he got out, slamming it shut with more force than necessary. He stood there for a moment, his lips pressed into a tight line, just staring at me with a brooding, silent intensity. The street light flickered on above us, casting his handsome face in dramatic relief. You hate me that much? He finally asked, his voice rough. I blinked. What? You won't even come out of the building if I'm here. You make Maya or Priya walk Amelia out. Every single day. He took a step closer, and maybe it was a trick of the light, but the nearly 6 feet 2 inches man looked almost aggrieved. You don't even want to see me? The accusation was so absurd, so completely backwards from the reality of my fear, that a startled laugh almost escaped me. I swallowed it. It's not that. The pickup duty just hasn't been assigned to me these last few days. Brenda rotates it. He let out a short, disbelieving snort. Right. The sound clearly meant who would believe that. But his expression shifted, the anger melting into something more petulant. He jammed his hands into his pockets. Cold as ever. I've been waiting out here for 20 minutes. I'm starving. I blinked at him, utterly bewildered. Why were you waiting for me? None of your business, he bristled, looking away. I felt like it. His tone, so righteously annoyed, was so incongruous that it actually tangled my thoughts. For a second I wondered if I was somehow in the wrong. Had I been rude? Was there some social contract about billionaire uncles waiting in art center parking lots that I'd violated? Hesitantly I ventured, then, why don't I buy you dinner? As a thank you for driving me home the other night. He pivoted back to me so smoothly it was almost comical. Get in, he said, already moving to open the passenger door for me. Reservations in half an hour. If we go now, timing's perfect. Reservation. I parroted, dumbfounded, as he all but guided me into the seat. He closed my door, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips as he walked around to the driver's side. The restaurant was an intimate, modern Italian place with low lighting and the scent of garlic and rosemary. Lucas was pulling up to the valet when my world tilted on its axis. There, just stepping out of a black town car on the other side of the entrance, was Alexander. And beside him, holding his hand, was Liam. On Alexander's other side, glowing under the restaurant's ambient light, was Diana Reed. She was laughing at something, her head thrown back, a picture of elegant, effortless joy. My breath caught. Liam was talking animatedly to a little girl about his age, a classmate perhaps. The girl was pointing at Diana, her voice carrying on the crisp air. Liam, is that your mom? Wow, she looks like a movie star. So pretty. I saw Liam's small body go rigid. His lips moved but no sound came out. The girl tilted her head, confused. But I remember one time the lady who picked you up looked like a kind of frumpy auntie. So which one is your mom? And there was the reason Liam had thrown such a fit the one time I'd picked him up from school when the driver was unavailable. In the mansion I'd lived in soft, worn loungewear, my hair in a simple ponytail, no makeup. I was the background noise of his life. Diana was the glittering foreground. I'd shown up in my frumpy auntie clothes, an embarrassment to his curated 6-year-old social standing. He'd sulked for a week. At the girl's question, Liam's face contorted. Then with a sudden, desperate motion he grabbed Diana's free hand. Of course, he said, his voice too loud, too high. Of course she's my mom. That other one was our housekeeper. Aunt Chloe. The final word was a whisper swallowed by the city sounds. Diana accepted the title without a blink, crouching down to smile hello at the little girl. A faint line appeared between Alexander's brows. He looked like he wanted to say something, his eyes scanning the scene with displeasure, but he remained silent. A soft, dangerous laugh sounded by my ear. Lucas had gotten out and was now standing beside my still-open door. He'd seen it all. His eyes narrowed to slits as he watched the little tableau. Chloe, he murmured, his voice a low, venomous purr. You raised a little gem. I'd known it in my heart. I'd suspected it. But seeing it, hearing my son renounce me so publicly, so casually to a stranger, I wasn't as calm as I'd hoped. A cold, sick feeling spread through my stomach. I dragged my gaze away, back to Lucas. Can we go somewhere else to eat? My voice was thin. Sure, he said easily. But wait. Before I could stop him, he was striding across the valet lane, his movements loose-limbed and predatory. He reached them just as the little girl was being led away by her parents. What a coincidence. Alexander Sterling. Out for a family dinner, I see. Lucas's voice was all polished charm, but it carried a serrated edge. Alexander's face went cold, a mask of polite disdain. Lucas. This is none of your concern. No need to be so tense, Lucas drawled, rocking back on his heels. Just wanted to offer my congratulations to you and Diana. Seems your happy reunion is official. His smile was all teeth. Oh right. I heard Chloe finally cut herself loose from your little drama. Good for her. Freeze you in the air up. Freeze her up too. She's only, 27? Still young. She'll marry someone better. Have cuter kids. Probably be happier than she ever was with you. At my name, Liam's head whipped around. He stared at Lucas, his small face pale. Alexander's chin lifted, his eyes turning to chips of ice. Lucas, he said, the single word a warning. What exactly are you trying to say? The air between the two men crackled, thick with old hatred and new tension. Lucas seemed utterly unfazed. He looked down from his height, his gaze landing directly on Liam. Hey kid. His tone was conversational, almost friendly. Don't think you're the only one who gets to not want your mom. She doesn't want you either. He leaned in just a fraction, his smile turning cruel. Remember that. She will never love you again. With a final mocking tilt of his head, Lucas turned and sauntered back to the car. Through the windshield, I saw Liam's fingers spring open, releasing Diana's hand. His face was utterly blank, a mixture of incomprehension and dawning horror. Lucas slid back into the driver's seat, his expression serene. He didn't look at me as he put the car in gear and pulled away from the restaurant, leaving the Sterling family frozen on the sidewalk behind us. We ended up eating wonton soup at a fluorescent-lit diner a block from my apartment. I stirred my soup, the events of the evening playing on a loop behind my eyes. Thank you, I said quietly. For today. For saying what you did. Don't waste your breath on thanks, he grunted, stabbing a dumpling with his chopstick. Do something real. Visions of unpayable debts, of diamond necklaces and sports cars I could never accept, flashed through my head. Like what? I asked wary. He tipped his chin toward my bowl. I'm not full. Fish me a few of your wontons. I stared at him. He stared back, completely serious. A surprised laugh bubbled up in my chest, breaking the grim tension. I used my spoon to carefully scoop 3 plump wontons from my bowl into his. There. If that's not enough, you can order another bowl. It's enough, he said, and finally a real, uncomplicated smile touched his eyes. The glass door of the diner kept opening and closing as customers came and went, letting in shreds of the chilly night air, softened now by the warmth of clattering bowls and steam. For the first time all evening I felt my shoulders begin to relax. Lucas Thorne was an enigma, a tornado of conflicting signals. But in this moment, over a shared bowl of soup, he wasn't Alexander's rival or a terrifying billionaire. He was just a man who defended me in the only brutal way he knew how, and who now wanted my wontons. It was the strangest peace I'd known in years. The night at the diner marked a subtle, seismic shift. Lucas didn't bring up Alexander or Liam again. He didn't press me for details or offer awkward sympathy. Instead he simply continued. He was a constant, unpredictable presence, woven into the fabric of my new life with a stubbornness that was both annoying and, I had to admit, somehow steadying. He'd show up at the canvas corner with flimsy excuses. Amelia forgot her advanced charcoal set, a set we didn't own, or I was in the neighborhood reviewing a property. Brenda, who had initially been starstruck, began to give me knowing, amused looks. The other teacher's hero worship cooled into a kind of respectful curiosity. Lucas Thorne, it seemed, had a favorite teacher. One evening, using Amelia's 93 on a math test as a pretext, he took us to a chic new fusion restaurant. The place was all dark wood and soft lighting, a world away from the wonton soup diner. Lucas spent the first 10 minutes viciously attacking his steak, his face a thundercloud. The Sterling stock is going to tank tomorrow, he announced, sawing through the meat with grim determination. It's going to plunge. I'm going to make sure of it. The steak was now a mangled, tragic mess. I morded it for a silent second. May I ask, I ventured carefully, swirling my wine, why you dislike Alexander so, personally? It's not just business, is it? Across the table, Amelia kept her face impressively straight, her eyes on her mashed potatoes. Because, she stated in her clear, matter-of-fact voice, Uncle Lucas likes you, Miss Chloe. The air in our cozy corner booth froze solid. My fork slipped from my fingers, clattering against my plate. My brain short-circuited, a fizzy, blank static. Lucas flung his knife down with a clatter. What nonsense are you spouting, gremlin? Color, vivid and unmistakable, raced up his neck and flooded his ears. It wasn't anger. It was sheer, unadulterated embarrassment. I found my voice, stammering to smother the awkwardness. It's okay. I can pretend I didn't hear it. Amelia, sweetie, that's not. I was babbling, my own face growing hot. To my horror, I realized I was nervous. My first instinct was to flee, just like I had in the lunchroom months ago. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly. I'm done. I'll just head home. Thank you for dinner. I didn't wait for a response. I hurried through the maze of tables, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I burst out onto the cool, noisy street, gulping in the night air. I'd only made it half a block when I heard quick, long strides behind me. A hand closed around my elbow, gentle but unyielding, pulling me to a stop. I turned. Lucas stood there, his chest rising and falling slightly from the quick walk. The streetlight turned his usually impeccable hair into a messy halo. His ears were still brilliantly, endearingly red. "Chloe," he said, his voice low. "You can't pretend you didn't hear." "Lucas, it's fine really, Amelia just..." "It's true." The words cut through my rambling. They were simple. Stark. His gaze held mine, the city noise fading to a dull roar around us. "I like you. I liked you even when you were with Alexander." Emotion roughened his voice, stripping away the last of his casual armor. "Even though you were a lovesick fool and it drove me insane to watch, I still somehow liked you." I didn't know what to say. I was frozen, my mind awhirl. I stared at the shoulder seam of his expensive coat, the words echoing in the silent spaces of my head. "I liked you. I liked you." "Thank you," I finally mumbled to his shoulder, the most inane response in history. "For liking me. I always thought you hated me." He let out a short, sharp breath that was almost a laugh. He folded his arms, a defensive, almost self-mocking gesture. "Yeah. That tracks. You're famously slow on the uptake." He shook his head, a wry smile touching his lips. "That night at the Hamilton Gala when I told you to look at someone else. I meant look at someone else. Like anyone else. Specifically me." He dug up the old memory, his smile turning into a grunt of frustration. "I waited by my phone for 2 days. Even ordered flowers. Nothing." I remembered that night vividly. The sting of his public mockery, the heat of shame on my face. I'd replayed his words. "Would it kill you to look around?" 1,000 times as a punishment. It had never, not once, occurred to me that it was an invitation. A badly worded, incredibly rude but genuine invitation. "You're hard to decipher," I said weakly. "And you're oblivious," he countered, but there was no heat in it. He cleared his throat, the awkwardness returning. He looked at me, his dark eyes serious in the uneven light. "Even though I already know the answer, I'll ask anyway. Properly this time." He took a shallow breath. "Chloe, will you go out with me?" My thoughts were still a tangled knot of shock and confusion. Dating? The very concept felt alien, an activity for people with unbroken hearts and simple histories. My life was a minefield of past attachments and fresh wounds. The word left my mouth on a reflex of pure self-preservation. "Sorry. I'm not planning to date anyone. Right now." He nodded once, his expression not changing. "Oh. No big deal. Don't worry about it." His voice was bland, accepting. "Come on, I'll take you home." I was surprised, almost disoriented by how lightly he seemed to take the rejection. In the car he talked about a new exhibit at the Modern Art Museum Amelia wanted to see. He was calm, friendly, unchanged. When he dropped me off, it was with the same casual wave as always. "See you tomorrow, Chloe." At home, I sank onto my sofa, quietly admiring his apparent decisiveness, his ability to pick up and let go without drama. It was impressive. A little disappointing if I was honest with myself, but impressive. Then my phone chimed. A voice message from Amelia. Her whisper was theatrical, urgent. "Miss Chloe." Code red. "Uncle Lucas seems to be having a fit. He went to the grocery store and bought a whole bag of onions. He's shut himself in the kitchen and he's chopping them all. His eyes are like super red. He's clearly crying, but when I asked, he yelled, 'It's the onions, Amelia. It's the damn onions. Men are so two-faced. I thought you should know.'" I played the message twice, a slow smile spreading across my face. The image was so absurd, so perfectly Lucas. All furious, wounded pride channeled into violently dicing vegetables. At the same moment, a text from him popped up. "Lucas, do you really not like me at all? Lucas, okay. Even if you don't, could you maybe start trying to look at me now? I want to fight for this a bit more. Lucas." Flops over. Every line dripped with that same awkward, childish pride I'd just heard about from his 8-year-old niece. The tough guy billionaire was, in reality, a bewildered, onion-chopping mess. The realization didn't scare me. It melted something inside me. Scenes about him resurfaced, not as isolated moments of cruelty, but re-examined through this new, startling lens. The time Alexander had left me stranded at a charity club after a fight. Lucas, who happened to be passing by, had scowled, grumbled about the traffic, and given me a silent, scowling ride home. The way he'd always seemed to be at the same events, his mocking comments now seeming less like attacks and more like frustrated attempts to get a reaction, any reaction from the numb woman trailing after Alexander. By now, I'd recovered from the brain crash. My feelings, slow and cautious, were coming into a blurry focus. I held my phone, my thumbs hovering over the screen. I took a deep breath and typed, "Me, it's not that I don't like you at all." I hit send before I could overthink it. The response was instantaneous. "Lucas, was your account hacked?" All the fragile, glowing feeling evaporated. This idiot. This magnificent, infuriating idiot. He was less a sleek predator and more a confused, overly large husky who'd just knocked over a vase. My phone rang in my hand. I answered, putting it to my ear without a word. "Did you mean it?" His voice was rushed, stripped bare. I hummed a low, affirmative sound. "Chloe." He stretched my name, the word almost a plea. "Could you say it? Out loud." Over the phone, hidden from his searching gaze, it was easier. I curled on my sofa, hugging a pillow to my chest, and hid my face in it. I whispered into the receiver, the words feeling dangerous and new, "Maybe like you. A little bit." Silence. Then after a few seconds his voice came back, hushed and wondrous. "I'm done for. I won't sleep tonight. I want to come see you. Can I come?" "No," I said, the word firm but laced with a smile he couldn't see. "Absolutely not." "Oh. A beat. Okay." He sounded ridiculously happy. After that, Lucas strutted through life like a peacock who'd just won first prize at the fair. When I left the center, he'd be leaning against the Maybach, holding a bouquet of stargazer lilies, his smile blinding. "Notice," he'd say smugly as I took the flowers, "how the sterling pest hasn't been clogging up the art center lately." I'd bury my nose in the fragrant blooms. "What did you do?" His brows would lift, a picture of innocence. "Just had a chat with his mother. Reminded her it's high time her son settled down. As we speak, Alexander should be on his, he'd check an imaginary watch, 11th blind date this month." It was so petty. So perfectly, transparently Lucas. He never brought up dating again, never pressed me for an answer or a label. He simply let his presence become a warm, steady fact of my life. Eager but never pushy. It was as if he was saying, "It's okay. Take your time. I'll wait for you to walk all the way out of the last shadow. But don't forget, I like you every single day." Meanwhile, Liam didn't last long in the art class. His departure was precipitated by a fight with Amelia. It happened during a "portrait of someone I love" assignment. I was circulating, offering gentle guidance, when I heard a sharp gasp and a rip. I turned to see Liam, his face pale and furious, holding two halves of Amelia's drawing. At his feet, Amelia stared at the torn paper, her own face a mask of shock before it crumpled. When she lunged to grab the pieces, he bit her arm. Her cry was one of pure pain and betrayal. I was across the room in seconds. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing, her small arm already showing an angry red imprint of teeth. I pressed my lips together, a cold anger settling in my stomach. I looked at Liam. "Liam, come here. Apologize right now." I had never used that tone with him, hard, stern, unforgiving. He stared at me, dazed, as if waking from a trance. Tears welled in his own eyes. "Mom," he whispered, the title slipping out. "I didn't do anything wrong. She's a thief. She stole your picture. That's why I tore it." Amelia, hiccuping against my shoulder, managed to explain. She'd forgotten what her own mother looked like. The person closest to a mother in her life right now was me. So, like Liam, she had drawn me. Liam's small hands balled into fists at his sides. "Then she can't draw it either. Only I can draw it." The possessiveness in his voice was a raw, wounded thing. He still believed he was defending what was rightfully his. Amelia's wound needed attention. The argument about right and wrong could wait. I picked her up, a comforting weight in my arms. "We'll discuss this later, Liam." Maybe my leaving had carved a deep, fearful crack in him. Seeing me walk away with another child in my arms, his replacement, triggered a panic. He scrambled after me, his tears falling in earnest now. "Mom, I'm sorry. Don't be mad. Don't go. Please, okay? Please. He followed us all the way to the infirmary, a forlorn shadow with tear tracks on his cheeks. After the nurse cleaned and bandaged Amelia's arm, he stood in the doorway, trembling. He walked up to Amelia, his head bowed. "I'm sorry," he mumbled. Then with a clumsy, heartbreaking motion, he rolled up his own sleeve and held out his pale arm. "You can bite me back. I'm sorry I tore your drawing. I won't do it again. I'm sorry, Amelia." I led him to an empty classroom while Amelia rested. The moment the door closed, the loud, gulping sobs broke free. He cried as if his heart were shattering, unable to form words, just calling "Mom, Mom," over and over, a helpless litany. I sat beside him, patting his back, waiting for the storm to pass. When his crying subsided into shaky hiccups, he leaned against me, his small hand coming up to grip my index finger with surprising softness. "Liam being here," he whispered, "it feels like I'm bothering you." The words were a dagger. I wiped his tears with my thumb. "Liam," I said gently, "this class, it isn't the right place for you. Not right now." It was the truth I'd been avoiding. As teacher and student, as mother and son, we could never have a clean, healthy separation here. The roles bled into each other, creating a painful, confusing tangle. The more we try to do both, the more it will hurt. He nodded, his breath still hitching, but his voice was eerily steady. "I understand." He looked up at me, his gray eyes swimming. "Then if I miss you in the future, can I come see you?" He saw my hesitation and his hands flew up, waving frantically. "Not often. Maybe once a month. Or once every 6 months." His eyes searched mine, trembling with the fear that he was asking for too much, that he'd used up his lifetime allotment of my affection. In the end, my heart overruled my head. I nodded. "Okay." A smile broke through, tinged with a sorrow that was too deep for a child. "Then last thing. I want one more hug." I opened my arms and he crawled into them, burying his face in my neck. He was so warm, so familiar. He lay there for a long moment, then spoke in a soft, secret whisper, as if afraid to disturb a precious dream. "I hope your future kids will be good. And listen to you." Pause. A shaky breath. "Most importantly, I hope they'll love you. Very, very much." I held him tight, tears stinging my own eyes. The pain of this parting in a season meant for new life was a withdrawal symptom twice as potent as any before. Spring overflowed with green, bursting life, which only made our goodbyes feel that much more final. Spring deepened, turning the city lush and green. The ache of Liam's departure from the art center settled into a dull, permanent bruise on my heart, but life, with its stubborn forward momentum, carried me along. Lucas was a constant, a complicated, grinning, flower-bearing constant. He never asked again about us, but his presence was a question mark hanging in the air between us, one I was slowly learning to live with. Then the call came. It was late, the city lights outside my apartment window a blurry constellation. "Chloe." Lucas's voice was uncharacteristically clipped, the background noise a murmur of voices and rustling papers. "School just called. There's a parent-teacher conference for Amelia tomorrow afternoon. Mandatory. Something about social-emotional development benchmarks." He sounded both annoyed and bewildered by the phrase. "Okay," I said, curling my feet beneath me on the couch. "I'm at the San Francisco office. A supply chain fire at one of the factories. It's a 5-alarm mess. I can't get back in time." A beat of silence, filled with the faint sound of an assistant urgently saying something about insurers. "Could you go? In my place? You're her emergency contact on the school forms." The request landed in my stomach like a stone. Oak Ridge Academy. The same exclusive private school Liam attended. The idea of walking those polished hallways, of possibly seeing him, of certainly seeing the world I'd escaped, sent a cold wave of dread through me. "Lucas, I'm not family." "They might not. They will. I'll have my assistant call the headmistress now." "It's sorted." His voice softened, the strain seeping through. "Please, Chloe. I don't trust anyone else to do this. And Amelia, she'd want it to be you." The please did me in. He never said please. I let out a long, slow breath, my resistance crumbling. "All right. What time?" I could almost hear his relief through the phone. 3:30. "You're a lifesaver. I owe you." After I hung up, the reality sank in. Same school as Liam. Same grade? Possibly. The memory of the restaurant, of him calling me the housekeeper, played behind my eyes. I couldn't show up there looking like Aunt Chloe. I couldn't give him or anyone else another reason to dismiss me. Before bed, I opened my closet. My clothes were still simple, but I'd slowly been adding pieces that felt like me. A tailored blazer, a silk blouse in emerald green, a pair of elegant dark-wash jeans. My fingers brushed past the practical puffy winter coat I'd planned to wear and stopped on a sleek cream-colored wool trench coat I'd bought on a brave impulse. I took it out, laying it on the bed. Then I put away my comfortable flats and pulled out a pair of heeled ankle boots I hadn't worn since my old life. The meeting was just before dismissal. At noon the next day, I slipped out of the canvas corner on my lunch break. I went to a small, stylish salon near my apartment, a place I'd walked past 100 times but never dared enter. Something professional but put together, I told the stylist, a woman with kind eyes and magenta hair. 2 hours later I emerged. My hair, usually in a messy knot or a simple braid, fell in soft, shiny waves around my shoulders. A touch of makeup, not the dramatic kind I'd worn to Alexander's events, but enough to highlight my eyes and give my lips a soft color, made me look like a more polished, confident version of myself. I hardly recognized the woman in the salon's mirror. She looked capable. She looked like she belonged. I arrived at Oak Ridge Academy's imposing iron gates with 15 minutes to spare. The building was all ivy and brick, whispering old money and quiet excellence. My stomach was a nest of butterflies. I called Amelia. I'm here. Which classroom are you in? Miss Chloe. I'll come get you. Wait right there. Her voice was an excited chirp in my ear. A few students milled around the grand front entrance, waiting for parents or rides. My gaze slid over them and then snagged on a small, solitary figure leaning against a stone column, kicking at a pebble. He saw me at the same moment. His head snapped up, his gray eyes wide. He ran over, his little brows knitted together in confusion. Mom? What are you doing here? The old title slipping out so easily was a small shock. I'm here for a parent meeting, I said, keeping my voice neutral. His face fell, then flushed with something like panic. No, you can't. I told Dad Aunt Diana was coming to mine. I already told my friends my mom's a ballerina. Aunt Diana's the only one who can do ballet. He made a frantic shooing motion with both hands as if I were a stray pigeon. Please, Mom, go away. Don't let my classmates see you. Miss Chloe. Amelia's clear voice cut through the tension. She waved at me from the top of the front steps, a beacon of calm. I looked from Liam's desperate, pleading face to Amelia's welcoming one. I'm here for her parent meeting, Liam, I said quietly. He froze, his mouth forming a silent, oh. His eyes darted from me to Amelia and back, the confusion deepening into something like hurt. I thought about explaining, but what was there to say? Her uncle asked me to. I'm important to someone else now. The words would only wound him further. So in silence I stepped around him and walked up the steps to Amelia. Which classroom? I asked, my smile feeling brittle. Class 1B, she announced, slipping her hand into mine. My smile wobbled and died. Class 1B. Liam's class. Which meant I would be sitting in the same room as Diana Reed. Before we entered, Amelia and I rehearsed our story in the hallway. I would be her aunt. It was a flimsy cover, but it was all we had. I was early. Only a handful of parents were in the room, sipping coffee from paper cups and looking at the children's artwork lining the walls. A cluster of kids swarmed Amelia as soon as we walked in. Wow, Amelia, your aunt is so pretty. She looks like a princess. She smells like flowers. I let out a quiet breath of relief. At least in my new armor I wasn't an embarrassment. I wasn't frumpy Aunt Chloe. Amelia, however, didn't look pleased. She sighed a very adult sigh and muttered under her breath, Ugh, Miss Chloe, you're this pretty. My uncle really doesn't deserve you. Amelia, that's not, I started, but my words died as I saw Liam come into the room alone. He looked at me, his expression a naked wound of confusion and betrayal, then dropped his head and shuffled to his desk. He folded his arms on the polished wood and lay his head down, turning his face away from the room. It was his universal sign for profound unhappiness. The meeting started. The teacher, a gentle-voiced woman named Mrs. Albright, called the class to order. She began going through announcements about upcoming field trips and reading initiatives. Then she said, "Now, I'd like to briefly check in with each of you about your child's social integration." Liam Sterling. Liam slowly sat up. His small body seemed steeped in a loneliness that hurt to look at. He glanced back at me, a reflexive seek for comfort. Just at that moment, Amelia leaned against my arm, pointing to her report card. "Look, Aunt Chloe, straight E's for exceeds expectations in every subject." My attention veered and I whispered praise to her. "You're incredible, Amelia. The best." When I looked back, Liam had turned away. He kept his head down, his pale fingers picking nervously at the edge of his desk. "Liam," Mrs. Albright prompted gently, "are your guardians here today?" He didn't answer. He just shook his head, a tiny, miserable movement. Mrs. Albright's kind face softened with pity. "I'll give them a call later, sweetheart. It's all right." Neither Alexander nor Diana ever showed. From start to finish, Liam spent the entire meeting with his head bent over his notebook, drawing furiously, sealing himself off from the happy chatter of parents and the proud presentations of other children. He was an island of silent sorrow in a sea of domestic contentment. When the meeting ended, I helped Amelia pack her backpack. On our way out, my phone buzzed. "Lucas, I'm at the gate," his voice came through, threaded with fatigue. "Wrapped up here faster than I thought. If you're free, Miss Chloe, let me buy you the biggest dinner in the city as a thank you." "You finished with the factory issue?" asked, surprised. He gave a lazy, tired affirmative. "Got off the highway and came straight here." The exhaustion in his voice was plain, and something else. A hoarseness. Amelia spotted his car and sprinted ahead, wrapping her arms around his legs as he got out. "Uncle Lucas." He looked up at me as I approached and did a visible double take. His eyes traveled from my newly styled hair, down the lines of my trench coat to my boots. He blinked, cleared his throat, and when he spoke again, his voice was oddly thick. "You look not bad." I stared at him. In the golden late afternoon light, I could see a faint flush high on his cheekbones. His ears were turning a spectacular shade of red. I stepped closer, concerned. "Lucas, are you okay?" He shifted uncomfortably. "What? Yeah. Why? Your ears are really red. And your face is a little flushed." Lucas stared at me for 2 full seconds. The red in his ears faded at a speed you could actually see, replaced by a look of utter exasperation. His expression flattened. "Chloe," he said, his voice deadpan. "You're a blockhead. You talk too much. Get in the car." I was so baffled by the sudden shift that I just obeyed, opening the passenger door. I was about to climb in when a familiar small voice, shaky with tears, sounded behind me. "Dad, has Mom really stopped wanting me?" I turned, my heart seizing. Alexander stood there, Liam's hand in his. They must have just arrived, far too late. The wind tossed Alexander's perfectly styled hair. His face was an unreadable mask as he looked from me to Lucas and back. Liam's eyes were rimmed red, his nose sniffly. Alexander's gaze swept over the three of us. Me, Lucas, Amelia clinging to his side. A terrible, cold understanding seemed to dawn on his face. He looked down at Liam and nodded, his voice devoid of emotion. "It appears so. She's off to be someone else's stepmother now." "Quite impressive, Chloe." Amelia, ever the literalist, wagged a finger. "Not stepmother. But maybe my future aunt." I shot a look at Lucas, utterly lost. He lounged against the hood of the Maybach, his earlier irritation gone, replaced by an irreverent, challenging smile. He held his hands up in innocence. "Wasn't me who said it. Why are you looking at me?" "Mom." Liam's voice was a timid thread. The fragile lightness of the moment before shattered. He looked at me, his eyes pools of naked pleading. "I'm sick. My throat hurts." A tear escaped, clinging to his long, dark lashes. It was a brutally effective look, designed to soften the hardest heart. "I want you." The old patterns, the deep grooves of 6 years of motherhood called to me. I fought against the pull. "Your daddy will take good care of you," I said gently, my voice barely above a whisper. After a painful pause, I added, "and Aunt Diana." "But I want you," he insisted, his voice breaking. He let go of Alexander's hand and scampered to me, clinging to the hem of my trench coat. When I didn't immediately pull away, he took it as encouragement, his small arms reaching up as if to hug me. "Mom, feel my forehead. It's hot." I didn't yell. I just took a deliberate, clean step back, breaking his hold, opening a foot of cold space between us. His arms hung frozen in midair. "Liam," I said, and my voice was clear now, carrying in the quiet that had fallen around the school gate. "The day I left, we made a promise. You asked me to promise I'd never come back, and I did. From now on, I'm not your mother anymore." Lucas watched, his idle interest sharpening into something darker. He chuckled, a low, unpleasant sound. "Hey kid. That day at the restaurant. When you said your mom was the housekeeper." He let the words hang, letting them find their mark. "She heard you." Liam's face blanched, all the color draining away. He looked at me, his eyes wide with dawning horror, as if finally, truly understanding the consequence of his words. The school gate was a cacophony of happy chaos. Parents laughing, children boasting about their grades, cars pulling up. It was a scene of normalcy, of family life moving forward. Only Liam and I stood trapped in our own silent, pitiful tableau, with nothing left to say. Alexander finally moved, placing a hand on Liam's rigid shoulder. "Come on, son." His voice was heavy. He didn't look at me again. He led Liam, now silently weeping, back to their waiting car. I stood there for a long moment, watching them go, feeling Lucas's gaze on me. The trench coat, the boots, the styled hair. None of it felt like armor anymore. It just felt like a costume for a play that had already ended. That night, after I'd changed into soft sweats and washed the makeup from my face, my phone rang. "Alexander." I answered, bracing for more anger, more accusations. "Are you with Lucas Thorne now?" His voice was strained, tight. If I didn't clear this up, it could cause real trouble for Lucas with the feud between them. "No," I said plainly. "But it's none of your business." A long pause stretched over the line, filled with the sound of his even breathing. Then he spoke, and his voice was different. Ragged. "Diana and I were never together. Not like that. She'd just come back from Paris, divorced. He wanted my contacts, my resources. The trending kiss photo. It was an angled trick. We didn't kiss." I sat down on the edge of my bed, the confession landing with a dull thud. I'd been with Alexander for almost 6 years. As Liam grew, things between us had, in their own stilted way, thawed. He'd once driven 500 miles through a thunderstorm to be home for my birthday. He'd allowed, even encouraged, people at his company to call me Mrs. Sterling. There had been moments, fragile and few, where a different future had seemed possible. Then Diana returned. The lunches, the business meetings, the whispered phone calls. The suspicion, the quiet, shattering arguments, the weeks of cold silence. The day the kiss photo hit the gossip sites, I'd finally demanded an explanation. Alexander had just looked at me with that infuriating half-smile and said, "What are we, Chloe, that I owe you an explanation? You're overstepping." So after that, I never asked again. I built a wall around my heart and lived behind it. Now, hearing him suddenly dismantle that wall, brick by painful brick, I felt only a profound confusion. A tired bewilderment. "Whatever you and Diana have going on," I said, my voice flat, "it has nothing to do with me. There's no need to tell me." He must have heard the complete lack of peaks and valleys in my tone, the absence of hope or hurt. His voice went rough, almost desperate. "Chloe, come back. Let's get married." He let out a faint, self-mocking laugh. "I've been in love with you for a long time. I just refuse to admit it." 2 scenes of too late regret in one day. First Liam, now Alexander. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. I couldn't even summon surprise. It was just another twist in a story I was no longer reading. With a dull headache blooming at my temples, I rubbed my forehead. "Alexander, why don't you first ask whether I still like you? Whether I'm even willing to marry you?" He went utterly still on the other end of the line. The silence was deafening. I told him the plain, unvarnished truth. "Whether it's you or Liam, I don't love either of you anymore." No sooner had the words left my mouth than I heard a sharp rustle, a gasp, and the thud of something small hitting the floor over the line. Alexander's voice turned tense, sharp with alarm. "Liam, how long have you been standing there?" My blood ran cold. He must have picked up the extension. He'd heard everything. He'd heard me say I didn't love him. I didn't wait for Alexander's response. I simply hung up the phone, the finality of the click echoing in the quiet of my apartment. The past, it seemed, wasn't done with me yet. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I was just terribly, deeply sad. And there was Lucas. One ordinary Wednesday I got off work a little early. Amelia's class had 20 minutes left. As usual, the matte gray Maybach was idling at the curb. Lucas was inside, head bent over his phone, his thumbs flying. From my spot by the door, I could see the deep frown etched on his face, the tension in his shoulders. Anyone else would think he was managing an international crisis. My own phone in my hand began to vibrate incessantly. I unlocked it. The first message was a news link from a financial website. Sterling global crisis deepens. Bankruptcy looms for overseas division. The second message was from Lucas. Not slander. Just facts. Men who coast on family name and lack actual ability end up like this. Attached was a screenshot of a graph with a line plummeting off a cliff. A third message followed instantly. Image. It was a selfie of him, a ridiculous, exaggerated pout on his face, in what looked like a corporate lobby. Oops. Sent that by accident. A fourth. This is my personal ranking on the national wealth list. Up 3 spots from last year. I think I deserve some praise. I stared at the sequence, a slow, incredulous smile spreading across my face. The pettiness was monumental. The transparency was absurd. Here was a billionaire, pretending to be busy while covertly texting me like a teenager, boasting about his ranking while subtly trashing his rival, all to make a point. I'm better. Choose me. For no reason at all, or maybe for every reason. The decision crystallized in my mind, clear and calm. I didn't overthink it. I didn't weigh pros and cons. I just walked across the sidewalk, my heart beating a steady, sure rhythm. He was still busily typing another message, no doubt something else wonderfully immature, when I tapped on the half-lowered window. He didn't look up. 1 second, I'm just... Excuse me, I said, my voice clear in the afternoon quiet. He glanced up, annoyed, ready to brush off a stranger. His eyes met mine. The annoyance vanished, replaced by blank surprise. I took a breath. Would you like to go out with me? Without looking, he rejected me on reflex, his attention dropping back to his phone. Sorry, I'm in a rella. He cut himself off mid-word. Lucas's head snapped up. His phone slipped from his fingers, clattering to the car's floor mat. He stared at me, his mouth slightly open, his expression caught between shock and a desperate hope. He looked almost stifled. His lips pressed into a thin white line. Chloe, he said, his voice strained. Don't joke about that. I'm not joking. I held his gaze, letting him see the certainty there. I asked again, slowly, each word deliberate. Excuse me. Would you like to date me? He searched my eyes, his own dark ones wide, vulnerable. The city noise, the distant traffic, the laughter from the park across the street, faded away. There was just the two of us and the question hanging in the air between the car window and the sidewalk. After a long, breathless moment, he finally believed me. A slow, radiant smile broke across his face, transforming it completely, erasing all the sharp, guarded lines. He pushed open the car door, stepped out, and in one smooth motion folded me into his arms. He was warm and solid, and he held me tightly, his face buried in my hair. I could feel the rapid beat of his heart against my chest. Good thing I waited, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Then, softer, as if confessing a secret, waited for the day you could actually see me. When Amelia came out 10 minutes later, he couldn't contain himself. He swung her up onto his shoulders, grinning like a maniac. Official announcement, Gremlin. From now on, Miss Chloe is your future aunt. Provisional. Pending further negotiations. Amelia, from her lofty perch, looked down at me with an expression of deep, solemn admiration. She patted the top of Lucas's head. Miss Chloe, she said gravely, you are a true philanthropist. Lucas snorted, jostling her playfully. Gremlin, asking for a spanking. Amelia shrieked with laughter, clinging to his hair. You have so many flaws, Uncle Lucas. Miss Chloe being with you is a charitable act. I'm gonna find a deserted island and leave you there, he threatened, but he was smiling wider than I'd ever seen. If you do, I'll introduce Miss Chloe to Mr. Henderson, our PE teacher. He has very symmetrical muscles. Amelia retorted. I leaned against the sun-warmed hood of the Maybach, propping my chin in my hand, watching them bicker with a smile so deep it felt like it would crack my face. The late afternoon sun was golden, painting everything in a warm, honeyed light. At some point, I turned to look down the street, where the trees were a vibrant, impossible green, their leaves lush and full, rustling in a warm breeze that carried the scent of cut grass and distant rain. I realized with a sudden peaceful clarity that the long, bitter winter of my old life was not just over. It was a distant memory, a season in another country. Here now was the full, flourishing heat of summer. And for the first time in a very long time I was not just enduring it. I was standing in the sun, feeling its warmth on my skin, and I was happy. The world didn't end when I said yes to Lucas. No lightning struck. The Maybach didn't transform into a pumpkin. Instead, something far more miraculous happened. Everything became ordinary, and the ordinariness of it was the most extraordinary thing I'd ever known. Lucas, for all his wealth and notoriety, was surprisingly normal to date. Or rather, he tried to be. Our first official date wasn't at a Parisian rooftop restaurant or on a private yacht. It was at a packed, noisy food truck festival, where he spent 20 minutes debating the merits of Korean-Mexican fusion tacos versus classic Chicago-style hot dogs with Amelia, mustard ending up on his chin. He'd looked so adorably, genuinely flustered when I reached up to wipe it off that Amelia had rolled her eyes and muttered, "Ugh, you're both disgusting." He didn't shower me with jewels or declare his love from the rooftops. He brought me coffee exactly how I liked it, cream, no sugar, and remembered I was allergic to cashews. He sent me terrible memes that made me groan, and listened with actual interest when I talked about the challenges of teaching color theory to 5-year-olds who just wanted to paint everything black. He was, in short, a man. A funny, stubborn, secretly soft-hearted, occasionally ridiculous man who happened to like me. And I liked him. More than a little. The realization grew slowly, a warm certainty spreading through me like sunshine. It was different from the frantic, all-consuming obsession I'd had for Alexander. That had been a sickness, a fever dream. This was health. This was choice. Alexander called once, about a week after Lucas and I started seeing each other. His voice was hollow, stripped of its usual confidence. "There's a serious crisis at the overseas division. In Shanghai. It's bad. Hard to solve from here." He paused, and I could hear the weight of a world collapsing in the silence. "I'm taking Liam abroad. To sort it out. We'll be relocating. For several years at least." His next words were so quiet I almost missed them. "Chloe, I'm sorry. For all of it." His apology hung there, too late to fix anything, but perhaps on time to finally close a door. "I've transferred the deeds to my domestic properties, about 20 of them, into your name. The lawyers will contact you next week. Think of it as compensation. Don't refuse. Please." I wasn't that materialistic. The idea of owning 20 of Alexander Sterling's properties felt alien, grotesque. But a stubborn, practical voice in my head, the one that had learned to budget and pay rent, whispered, "Money at your back is never a bad thing. Security. Freedom." I didn't want his guilt money, but I would accept it as the severance package I'd earned through 6 years of emotional labor. "All right," I said quietly. "Take care of yourself, Chloe." And he was gone. Just like that. The final clean cut. I told Lucas that night over takeout Thai food in my apartment. He listened, chopsticks poised over his pad thai, his expression unreadable. "So he's running," Lucas said finally, not with his usual triumphant glee, but with a sort of grim understanding. "The empire's cracking, so he's taking the air and retreating to safer ground." He shook his head, then looked at me, his eyes sharp. "You're not going to miss him." It wasn't a question. "No," I said, and I meant it. The feeling was absences. No ache, no longing, just a quiet acknowledgement of an empty space where a storm used to be. "Good." Lucas reached across the table, his hand covering mine. His touch was warm, sure. "His loss is my very, very great gain." Life settled into a new, sweet rhythm. Lucas became a fixture at the canvas corner, to the point where Brenda started asking him to move heavy boxes of clay. He'd do it, grumbling theatrically, then wink at me. He still waited for me after work, but now he'd be leaning against the car, a bouquet of wildflowers or a single absurdly expensive orchid in hand, a smirk on his face as he watched the other teachers subtly nudge each other. "Notice," he'd say one day, handing me a bunch of sunflowers, "how the Sterling pest is currently on a blind date with a woman whose main passion is breeding hairless cats. His mother's idea. I may have suggested it." "You're terrible," I'd laugh, smelling the flowers. "I'm strategic," he'd correct me, opening my car door with a flourish. He brushed a stray strand of hair from my cheek, his thumb lingering on my skin. "So," he said, his voice low. "Where to, Chloe?" I looked past him down the tree-lined street. The late afternoon sun was a molten gold, painting the world in a warm, honeyed light. The leaves on the trees were a vibrant, triumphant green, so lush and full they seemed to pulse with life. A warm wind swept down the sidewalk, carrying the scent of cut grass, blooming roses, and the faint, salty promise of the distant ocean. It ruffled my hair and the hem of my dress, not a cold, biting wind from a painful past, but a warm, beckoning wind from a future wide open. I turned my face into it and closed my eyes for a second, just feeling it. Then I looked back at Lucas, at his waiting, hopeful face, and I smiled. "Anywhere," I said, and I meant it. "Let's just go home." He took my hand, his fingers lacing through mine, a perfect fit. I realized, with a calm and certain joy, that the long, barren winter was not just over. It was a forgotten season from another lifetime. Here now was the full, flourishing, radiant heat of summer. And I was no longer just surviving it or watching it from a window. I was standing in the sun, the warm wind in my hair, my hand in his, and I was finally and completely home. The end.